Now, if you're anything like me, you probably have your old favorite gaming computer tucked away in a closet somewhere. Now, it's too old to play any modern day games. However, that's how we fell in love with gaming. It's like our best friend. We can't get rid of that. Well, today I got some great news for you, because we're going to take our old favorite out of the closet and we're going to put him to work on some cutting edge technology. That's right. Our 10-year-old gaming computer is going to turn into a Brinks AI worker node. Now, Brinks aims to revolutionize AI tool landscape by leveraging the power of decentralized networks and cryptocurrency incentives. By integrating DePIN with AI, they will create a robust ecosystem that rewards node operators, supports third-party developers, and caters to various users' needs, including students, developers, and those with reading difficulties. So all the way around, this seems like a pretty good cause for my best friend. So today we're going to dust him off, and I'm going to walk you step by step through the process, how to transform that old gaming system to a new AI worker node. Now, before we get started, there are a couple things I want to tell you about. First of all, I got to give thanks to the Crank Network. You see, thanks to the multi-mining software that I'm running on my old Helium miner is how I discovered Brinks AI. And with that multi-mining software, my Helium miner is already operating as a relay node. Not to mention the 15 other cryptocurrencies I'm also earning with my Helium miner. Now, if you want to know how you can get started with Crank, go check out this video here where I walk you step by step through the process on getting your license and getting your multi-mining up and running. Now, the second thing I want to tell you is, simply put, I am not a Linux operator. Okay, I run on Windows, so Linux doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm going to put links in the description down below to the documentation, the website, and the Discord. So if you run into any problems, definitely jump in there and talk to the Brinks team. They're happy to help you out and super friendly. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so here we are on our old favorite, and I even flashed the hard drive to make sure there's nothing else there. Now, the first thing we want to do is go to the Brinks website and create an account. And click the referral link on the description down below, which will take you straight to the registration page, or you can go to the website directly and sign up that way. So to get registered, simply type in your email address, enter a password, and if you want to use my referral code, greatly appreciate it. From there, go ahead and click register. Now, once you've registered, it'll take you straight to the worker dashboard. And as you can see, we have no worker nodes and no relay nodes. Well, today, we're going to set up that worker node. So now that we have our account created, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have virtualization turned on in the BIOS. Now, every motherboard is a little bit different, but to check that, go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete on your keyboard, and then go to Task Manager. From here, go ahead and click More Details, and go into Performance tab. Now, from there, it's going to tell you right down here, virtualization is enabled. That means it's turned on in the BIOS. If yours is not turned on, definitely check the manual for your motherboard and find out how to turn that on. Now, while we're here, we also want to take a look at the system resources. So as you can see in the memory, I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I also have 8 logical processors. Now, that hardware limitation is going to decide how many features I can turn on as a worker node, because there are 4 different things we can run. Now, I can tell you right off the bat, I can't run all of them with this machine, but hey, I can run some of them, and that's something better than just sitting in the closet. But now that we've verified that virtualization is turned on in the BIOS, we're ready to proceed. Go ahead and close out on that. And then let's go down in the taskbar here and type PowerShell. Now it's going to come up with different options. We want Windows PowerShell System. Go ahead and click on that. Now this is going to open up your Windows PowerShell window. Now the first thing we want to do is type in WSL space -- install and hit enter. Then it's going to ask, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? It says Microsoft Windows Subsystem for Linux Launcher. Yes, we do want to install that, and it's going to turn on the features to allow Linux to run on our machine. So once we've done that, you can see installing a virtual machine platform and installing Windows Subsystem for Linux. Then it asks, do you want to allow this to make changes to your device, which is host process for Windows services? And yes, I do. Now it's going to take a minute or two for it to go through, turn these features on, and install a version of Ubuntu. So give it a minute, let it complete its task. Okay, there we go. It is finished completing, but it does say changes will not be effective until the system is rebooted. So let's go ahead and close that window. Let's go start, power, and restart. Okay, then as soon as our computer restarts, you can see the Ubuntu window open, and it says installing. This may take a few minutes. Now, this does take a little bit of time, so please be patient, let it complete its task, and we'll continue on as soon as it's done. Okay, it's finally finished. It took about 8 or 9 minutes. Now, I don't expect a 10-year-old machine to rock and roll out of the gate like a modern day machine is, so we're going to have to be patient through this whole process. But as you can see, it says enter new Unix username. So we're going to create a username to run the Unix or Ubuntu. Okay, so pick one you want, but make sure the username is all small, no special characters. So I'm going to use Serenity. Enter your username and hit enter. Now, the next thing it's going to ask you for is a new password. Now, a couple things you got to know about. First of all is while you're typing the password, it will not show anything. Do not freak out, but make sure you're typing it accurately as you're doing this because you'll never see what you're typing. You can use capitalized and special characters in this, not a problem, but you're going to enter it twice. So go ahead and type in your password. Once you've typed that in, as you saw, nothing happened, hit enter. Then it's going to ask you to retype your new password. Make sure you re-enter it exactly the same. Once you've got that entered, hit enter and make sure to note this down somewhere. It says password updated successfully, initialization successful, goes down there, and now you see text that is green that ends in a $sign. Now this is really important because that $sign signifies it's ready for a new action or command to be entered. If you don't see a $sign, it probably means that you've got to hit the enter key if you're running multiple lines of code. But right now we're ready to proceed. Now, the next step is I like to go into the Microsoft Store and download one of the latest versions of Ubuntu. Now, a Linux operator may say this is totally useless. It's just doubling down. You don't need it. For me, it's been working great. So I'm going to keep that same pattern. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to type Microsoft. And there we see the link to the Microsoft Store. I'm going to go and open that up. Now, once that's open, I'm going to go up here to the search bar and type Ubuntu, Ubuntu, and hit enter. Now, what I'm looking for is an LTS version or long-term support. That's what that LTS stands for. And I want one of the newest. So what I can see here is a 22.04.5 LTS. And I'm going to go and click install. Okay, it says it's complete. Let's go ahead and click open. Now it says that it's installing and this may take a few minutes. Now, like I said, you may not have to do this newer version, but for me, it's been working out great. And to be honest, trying to go through PowerShell, I haven't had the best of luck. So this is just my safety net from previous experiences. Now, once again, it's asking me for a Unix username. I'm going to use the same one. Serenity, and then the new password. Again, I'm going to use the same one. And once again, as you type this in, it will not appear as you're typing. And there we go. Installation successful. We're back to the $sign. Now, like I said, this may not be required. It's just how I feel comfortable. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and close the Microsoft Store so I have just Ubuntu. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and right click and I'm going to pin this to the taskbar just so I've got it for quick access. Okay, now that that's installed, I'm going to go ahead and close both Ubuntu windows so I'm back at a clean desktop. Now, next thing I want to do is go back into PowerShell. So go down here on the taskbar and type in PowerShell. And we want Windows PowerShell System. Click on that, and that's going to open up our PowerShell window. Now, what we want to do is check what version of PowerShell we're connecting to Ubuntu. So to do that, type in WSL space -L space -V and hit enter. Now, what we're checking for here is that both versions of our Ubuntu are running version 2. Now, if it doesn't have a 2 next to your Ubuntu, you've got to upgrade it. Now, that can be very challenging. I did find some guides on the internet, but I'd highly recommend jump in the Brinks Discord, talk to the team, ask them for some assistance, and get it set up. But now that we know we have version 2, we know we're good to go. We can go and close PowerShell back down. The next thing we need to do is check our system settings to find out if we're running AMD 64 or ARM 64. So to do that, go ahead and click Start. Go down to Settings. When you get your pop-up window, go ahead and click on System. Then you want to scroll down the list until you see About. Go ahead and click on that. Now what we're looking for here is system type. So if you read across there, 64-bit operating system, x64 based processor. That means this is an AMD 64-bit processor. Now, really important, if yours says ARM 64, that's something you got to pay attention to later in the steps. So I highly recommend get yourself a notepad and make a list of these details as we're going through these steps. Once we have that information, go ahead and close that window out. Okay, now that we've got all that set up, let's go get the next program we're going to need to integrate all this together. And that's called Docker for Desktop. So go ahead and open a browser tab and go ahead and go to docker.com and hit enter. Now that's going to take us to the main Docker website. What we're looking for is Docker Desktop. So right here you see download Docker Desktop, and it has several different versions depending on what kind of computer you're running. Well, since we have the Windows AMD 64, we're going to go ahead and click on that one. Now, as you would be able to see up here in the top corner, the download has begun. Sadly, my head's in the way. So let's go ahead and open our File Explorer. Let's go into our Downloads folder. You'll see right there, Docker Desktop Installer is complete. Let's go ahead and click on that. Then it pops up a window. Do you want to allow this app to make changes? Docker Desktop Installer. And yes, we do. There you go. It says Docker's finished installing. Configuration add shortcut to desktop. Sure, let's do that and go ahead and click OK. Now it's going through and unpacking all the files in the Docker. Now this is going to take some time. Let it run its course. Go get a drink and we'll check back in as soon as it's done. Okay, after about 7 or 8 minutes, it says installation succeeded. You must log out of Windows to complete the installation. So we're going to go ahead and click close and log out. And right there, it just closed it down and it's signing out of Windows. That's totally okay. It's what it's supposed to do. Now from here, we can go and log back in. Just go and enter and type in your code. Now once your system fully boots up, it'll pop up this message. It says Docker Subscription Service Agreement. Go ahead and click Accept. Then it's going to ask you to create a Docker account. Now you do not have to do this. You can simply skip through, or you can go through and say that yes, it's for personal use. A lot of this is if you use Docker extensively, then you have to get a subscription. But for what we're doing, we don't have to worry about it. So I'm just going to go ahead and click skip. And then I'm going to skip on that as well. And last but not least, skip one more time. Okay, now it says it's starting the Docker engine. Go ahead and let it get set up. Okay, now that it's fully set up, you can see Docker Desktop is open. What we need to do is go into settings. So right up here at the top right, click on that gear. Then over on the left, go down to resources. Open that up. Go down to WSL integration and click on that. Now, as we did in the earlier steps, we installed Ubuntu, then we did the 2.04. So what we want to do is turn on the integration to Docker to both of these versions. Once you have that, go ahead and click apply and restart. Okay, now even though we just installed Docker, you can see at the bottom here, it says there's a new version available. Let's go ahead and open that up. And it says Docker Desktop version 4.35.0 is available. Let's go ahead and download that. And it says Docker Desktop is ready to install. Restart Docker Desktop to install. Let's go ahead and click Restart. Ask, do we want to allow this to make changes? Docker Desktop Updater. Yes, we do. Now it's preparing for the update. So let's go ahead and let it run its update. And hopefully this will make things run even a little quicker. Okay, so after the update, it pops up Windows Defender Firewall has blocked some features of this app. We want to make sure, go ahead and click private networks such as home or work network and click allow access. Now we're back at this skip screen again. So we're going to go ahead and skip through that. Now, once again, we want to go in and verify our WSL integration. So go ahead and click on that gear at the top, go over on the side to resources, and then go down to WSL integration. And yes, they are still turned on, so we are good to go. Okay, now it's time to go set up the worker node. So first thing we want to do is just minimize Docker. We don't want to close it. We just want to minimize it. Next thing, we want to open up a browser tab, and we want to go to the Brinks AI website. And I'll put a link in the description down below. Now from here, we want to open up the Documents tab. And then on the left, go over here to where it says Worker Node Setup. Click on that. Now this is going to tell us our minimum system requirements and also the recommended system. Now, remember what I said before, the minimum was 8 vCPU cores? Well, we saw that in the settings. This is an 8 logical core processor, so it barely meets the minimum standard. 16 gigs of RAM, once again, we barely meet the standard. Now, of course, the better your system is, the better it's going to perform. Now, it does say a GPU is optional. Right now, GPU is not capable, but it will be in future updates. So for the moment, it doesn't even matter what the graphics card is. So if you're worried you don't have a top-end graphics card and you're missing out, you're really not. So we want to jump over here to where it says Worker Node Docker Setup, because we're going to use the Docker. Now, if you got a GUI setup with Linux, you would go through that guide. But we've got Docker, we're going to start here. Now, this is where it starts giving us the code, and we're going to be putting this into the Ubuntu that we installed earlier. So let's go ahead and open that up. Okay, so I've got things rearranged a little bit just so I can see everything at once, because it does get rather hectic. Now, first thing we have to do is the firewall setup. So Linux Ubuntu firewall setup. This is where it turns into a copy paste. Now, if you're not a Ubuntu user, here's a trick for you. Whenever it gives you a line of code, over on the side, it has a copy button. Go ahead and left click on that. But when you jump into Ubuntu, right click to get focus on the window, and then right click again will automatically paste that code. If you try to use Control-C, Control-V, it does not work in Ubuntu. So real important, just right click into the tab. It'll automatically copy the code. From there, you can see the cursor is flashing at the end of the line of code, waiting for an entry. So all we have to do now is hit enter. Now, the first thing it's going to ask you for is your password. Now, we set that earlier, and I hope you wrote it down. Go ahead and type in your password and hit enter. Okay, now the result says status inactive. That means the UFW firewall is not installed. So, like it says here, if UFW is not installed, you can install it with this code. So let's go ahead and copy that code. Go over here, right click again to paste, and hit enter. Okay, UFW is already the newest version. Okay, we're good to go. Okay, next step is allow the required ports. Now, you can set this up on any port you want. The default is 5011 TCP. So far, that's been working great for me with no changes and no port forwarding in my router. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it on that port, but if you wanted to change port numbers, this is where you would change it. But we're going to leave it, so let's go ahead and copy, right click again to paste, and hit enter. Okay, the rules have been updated, so let's jump to the next step. Enable UFW. So once again, we copy, over, click, and enter. Firewall is active and enabled on system startup. Okay, now we got to verify the UFW status. So once again, copy, go over, right click, and enter. Okay, status active and port 5011 TCP is allowed. So we're good to go there. Okay, so we're ready for the next step. We need to go in and set up the Windows firewall. So it gives us very clear instructions. We're just going to follow along. So first, press Window R, same time, then type in firewall.cpl and hit enter. Now this opens up Windows Defender firewall settings. So it says in the Windows firewall window, click on Advanced Setting on the left side. Go down here to Advanced Settings, and that's going to open up another window here. Now it says create a new inbound rule. So in the Windows firewall with Advanced Security, click on Inbound Rules on the left pane. Let's go down here where it says Inbound Rules. Let's go ahead and click on that. Then it says click in New Rule on the right pane. So we go New Rule. Now under Rule, we want to make sure it says Type, and we go down here to where it says Port and select Port and click Next. Now we want to make sure to choose TCP and enter the specific port number we want to allow through. Now remember, the default is 5011. So we're going to type in 5011 and go ahead and click Next. Okay, then we want to set the action for that, and that is allow the connection. So if it's selected, go ahead and click Next. Next, it's going to ask us, where does this rule apply? Domain, private, and public. Make sure all three are checked and go ahead and click Next. Now we want to give this a name. So we're going to call this the Brinks AI worker node. And you can name it whatever you like. You can type in a description if you want to. Totally up to you. From there, go ahead and click Finish. And there you go. We've just added the Brinks AI worker node into the inbound rules. So we're done with that step. We can go ahead and close that window. And we can close the one before that. All right, we're back to where we were. Now we're installation on Linux and Windows. Now we've already installed Docker, so we can go ahead and roll right past that section. Next, it says pull worker image from Docker Hub. Run the following command in your terminal. So let's go ahead and copy that. Go back over here and paste it in and hit enter. It says pulling latest from admin Brinks AI nodes worker. This is where it's going to take some time. Do not rush it. Just let it do its job. And remember, when it's ready for the next step, it will pop up with that green text and a $sign. If you do not see a $sign, do not get click happy. Just wait for it. Okay, that's finally complete. It took us about 10 minutes, but like I said, just be patient. It will finish. So back to our instruction manual. Step 3 says install NVIDIA drivers for Docker, which is optional. Now, right now, the worker node will not operate on your GPU, so it's kind of irrelevant. We're going to skip over that. Next, step 4 says run worker Docker image. Now, this is really important whether you're operating this code on Linux or through the Windows PowerShell. Now, since we are operating it in a Linux window, we're going to use this top code. If we were doing it for PowerShell, we would take the bottom one. So, really important to pick out which one's correct. Once again, we're going to copy that, go over here and right click and paste. And there we go. It immediately starts running. But here's a little trick. See how it still has a line of code and a flashing cursor at the end? That means it's not done processing because this is multiple lines of code. To tell it to continue, go ahead and just hit enter. Next, it's going to ask for a password. Go ahead and type that in again and hit enter. Now it's going to pause at this line here where it says enter the port number for the worker port. Now, depending on what port you configured earlier, the default was 5011. If you changed it, you got to enter that port into this field. We used 5011, so we're going to type that in, 5011, and enter. There we go. It says it's running 2 of 2. Network Brinks AI is created, and container Brinks AI worker nodes is started. So technically, our worker node is now active. It's not performing any tasks, but it is up and running. Now, if we open our Docker back up and then go ahead and close this settings tab, we can see right here that we have a container running in Docker for the Brinks AI worker node. So the next thing we have to do is go into the dashboard and configure our worker node. One piece of information we're going to need before we get there, that's our public IP address from where we're running our node. So let's go ahead and open up our browser again, and we're going to open up a website called whatismyip.com. Go ahead and type that in and hit enter. Now, as soon as you do, it's going to tell you your public IPv4 address. That's the one we need. So go ahead and write that down somewhere. Then once we have the public IP, we can go ahead and close that tab and go back to the Brinks dashboard. Now, this is where we're going to configure and set up the final steps of our node. So the first thing we want to do is go under your worker nodes. We want to add a worker node. So go ahead and click that button there. Now you can name it anything you like. So we're going to call this Serenity Home. Next is the node IP address. Now this is your public IP address that we just got from whatismyip.com. So go ahead and paste that IP address in. Last is the port. What port number did we program our node with? If it's default, it's 5011. Once you've entered all that, go ahead and click Add Node. Now, I will warn you, you cannot make multiple accounts on Brinks AI from the same IP address. It does check them. So when I tried to import into a test account for this node, well, since it's running from my IP, it gave me an error. So we had to take it over to my main account. So as you can see right here, this is my primary Brinks AI account. And right here is the node we just set up, and it is showing status as active. But what we want to do is go turn on some more tasks, kind of like this other one right next to it. We want to see a lot of green dots because that's when it starts earning. So here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and click on the models button down below. And this is going to list out the different models as well as the resources going to take. So the text UI requires 4 threads. The stable diffusion requires 8 threads. The REMBG requires 2 threads. And the upscaler requires 2 threads. So this is where if you have a real low-end processor, you could decide you're only going to run the upscaler or the REMBG. Maybe that's only 4 threads and you can run that. Or if you have a 16 core, you can run them all. Pick and choose according to what your system can run. Now, here's a little pointer. I have tried running the text UI on a low-end processor. Even by itself, it would not do it. That one seems to be a huge resource hog. Even though it only says 4 threads, it actually uses more resources than the stable diffusion. Why that is, I have no idea. But if you run into problems, what it's going to do is try to start, and then after a few seconds, just shut off. So don't be concerned if you start a task and after just a few minutes, it shuts off. Probably means you didn't have enough resources. So let's go through and install these one by one. And since this is such an old computer, I'm going to start with the least amount of resources required and work my way up to the heavier ones. So we're going to start down here with Upscaler. Now here's the trick. The first thing we have to do is install the Upscaler onto our node. To do that, click on the manually turn on models. From there, you can see it has all your different models here. We're going to start with Upscaler. So we want to copy this piece of code right next to Upscaler. Then we want to go down and open our Ubuntu back up. And of course, we want to paste it back in. Now, as soon as we paste it, it immediately starts downloading all the requirements to run the Upscaler. Now, each one of these tasks can take upwards 5-10 minutes or even a little bit longer. Once again, be patient, let it just do its thing. Okay, that only took about 5 or 6 minutes, not too bad. Says it's complete, we know because we're back the $sign. But let's go check our dashboard and see if it's actually up and running. So we can go and close out of this, close out of that, and close out of that, and then go ahead and click refresh. Now, when we look at the Serenity Home PC, you can see right there, Upscaler has a green light. It is up and running and working correctly. So let's go ahead and install one more model. So go ahead and click on models. And remember, we did Upscaler already. We want to go to the next least resources, which is the REMBG. So we're going to manually turn on models, find REMBG, copy that code, take that back into our Ubuntu, and then right click. And once again, it's up and running. So we'll check back as soon as this is done and make sure it installs correctly and is running smoothly. Okay, looks like it's complete. Let's go check and make sure the tasks are running appropriately. So we go back into our Brinks dashboard, go ahead and close that one. And let's go ahead and refresh this and check for another green light. Sure enough, there we go. REMBG now has a green light and is running. So what we got to do is turn on a couple more and see just how much this old dog can handle. So once again, let's go ahead and click on models. Go ahead and manually turn on models. And then we're going to do the stable diffusion next. Now, this says it's an 8-core task. We know we only have 8 cores and 2 tasks are already running. So this is where we start pushing the bounds. Now, of course, you can try the text UI, but like I said before, I didn't have any luck with it. So we're going to go and try the stable diffusion and see if this works. So go ahead and copy the code there. Go ahead and back to Ubuntu, right click, paste it in, and there we go. It's up and running. Let's see how this one handles it. Okay, it says it's installed. Let's go check it out. So let's go back to our dashboard and go ahead and close out of these guys and do a quick refresh. And there we go. Stable diffusion says it's running. That's great. Now, if you want to check your resources or how much power these are utilizing, go ahead and head over to your Docker image. Open that back up. And now you can go through the containers and find out just how much of the CPU usage is being used. Now, since I have 8 CPUs available, what it calls threads, that's 800%. It says I'm using 99.25% of those. And if we scroll down, we can see the stable, it's pushing a lot, 100% now. So it's using one entire thread. Now, if you have a container that is overpowered and it's simply not going to handle it, it'll simply stop working. The others should stay running. At least that's how mine's worked so far. But let's see if we can push this just a little bit further. So let's go ahead and try turning on the last one and see what happens. So once again, go back into models, go manually turn models on, and the dreaded text UI. We're going to copy that, head over to Ubuntu, and then right click and get it going. So now, moment of truth. Let's see if it's going to work. There we go. Moment of truth. It says the text UI did install. Let's go ahead and open our Docker and make sure she's running. So right here, the latest one says Brinks AI nodes is up and running. Been running for 32 seconds, 39, and CPU usage is 14%. And then suddenly it just stopped running. So as you can see, it exceeded the resources available. And when that occurs, it will simply shut down. So you don't have to worry about the entire node crashing, just the one model that it doesn't have the power to run. So now that we have our worker node up and running, you probably came up with a bunch of questions during this video. For instance, how much are we going to earn? Why did we set up a worker node and not a relay node? When can I cash out my tokens? All these are great questions. And I highly recommend go through, read the white paper to get detailed explanations. But to break it down for you really simply, why did we set up a worker node instead of relay node? Well, if we take a look here on the dashboard, I've been running relay nodes for a couple weeks utilizing the Crank dashboard. As you can see, this one earned 63 points. One down here earned 149. Our worker node that I've had running for about 5 days earned 2,245 points. So as you can see, there's a huge boost for running a worker node versus a relay node. Now, if you have a top-end computer and you want to run a relay as well as a worker node, you can absolutely do that. In fact, it's over here in the documentation under the field Relay Node Setup for Docker. Now, as you can see, it's the exact same process. Simply copy and paste each line of code. Make sure your Windows Firewall has that open up. So you go through the same steps. And the great thing is, if you already have Ubuntu up and running, you simply start from where we left off. Go through this process and it'll get your worker node up and running. But as we know with this computer, we're already pushing the limit. So I didn't want to go through that process and also make this a really, really long video. But if you run into any problems, you can reach out to me in Down Home Crypto or jump in the Brinks Discord and ask those guys. Always happy to help. The next question you all have is, how much are we going to earn? Well, that's a little trickier of a question. You see, we are super early at getting into the Brinks AI. We're so early, the testnet hasn't even launched yet. That's why if you look at the dashboard, we're earning points. Now it says our points will be converted for 1 point will equal 0.9125 testnet tokens. Now when we cross-reference that information into the white paper, we can see there will be a total of 1 billion Brinks tokens ever supplied. Of that, 4% go to the testnet users. That's us. That's what we're earning right now. But while we're here, let's look at the token distribution after mainnet launch. As you can see, a worker node is going to earn 52% of the token supply, where a relay node will only be earning 7%. Now, as you can tell, we are super early at getting into Brinks AI, but we know that getting in early is one of the key features to making great profits. Even better is when we can utilize hardware we already own. It means it's nothing out of pocket. Just a little bit of time spent and a little bit of speculative mining. Hey, after all, what else is that computer doing but sitting in the closet? But as I always recommend, do your own research and decide for yourself. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody else. Make sure this is right for you. But if you are enjoying this content and you want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe to the video because I'm going to keep bringing you the best crypto information I can. I want to thank you very much for your time. And until next time, have a great night.